My picture-perfect life shattered the moment my husband walked through our front door with a toddler on his hip and a confession on his lips that was more devastating than any nightmare I could have conjured. My name is Leah, I'm 34, and up until that Tuesday afternoon, I would have bet everything I owned that my marriage to David, 37, was unshakable. We'd been together for 7 years, married for 5, and he was my anchor, my best friend, the man who'd see me through career changes, family losses, and the quiet, private grief of infertility. He was the one who held me when the doctor said the word endometriosis, like a final verdict, his arms tight around me as if he could squeeze the pain right out of my body. I believed in us, in him, with a faith that felt uncomplicated and pure. Looking back, that's the most terrifying part. How utterly convincing the performance was. Our story wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was a slow, steady burn that felt destined. We met through mutual friends at a weekend barbecue. He was quiet, observant, with a dry wit that took a moment to land but always made me laugh. He wasn't like the other men I dated. There was no flash, no over-the-top grand gestures. He was consistent. He remembered my favorite wine, called when he said he would, and his eyes never strayed when an attractive woman walked by. In a world of dating apps and ghosting, David felt like a sanctuary. My previous relationships had been messy, emotionally draining affairs. With David, it was peaceful, easy. I mistook that ease for transparency, not realizing that still waters can run deceitfully deep. His family adored me. David was the eldest of 2, the responsible one, and his parents, Robert and Diane, welcomed me with an open warmth that felt genuine. They lived a few hours away in a quiet suburb, and we saw them for holidays and occasional weekends. There was no pressure, no meddling. Diane would sometimes send me articles about mindfulness or a new recipe she thought I'd like. It felt like I'd won the in-law lottery. My own family is smaller, just my mother and a younger brother, Ethan, who lives abroad. David filled those spaces in my life with a solid, reassuring presence. We built a home together, a cozy 3-bedroom house with a garden we were slowly cultivating. It was all so normal, so blissfully, boringly normal. I crave that normalcy. I think that's why I miss the signs. Who looks for cracks in the foundation of paradise? The first real test came 2 years into our marriage, after a year of unsuccessfully trying for a baby. The fertility specialist's office was cold, all sterile surfaces and dimmed lights. The diagnosis was a blow. My chances of conceiving naturally were almost non-existent. IVF was presented as the primary, most hopeful path. I remember sitting there, the world tilting on its axis, and David, without so much as a glance at me, launched into a rapid-fire conversation with the doctor about protocols, success rates, and financial plans. It was as if I were a piece of furniture. My voice felt lodged in my throat. I had always been ambivalent about IVF. The physical and emotional toll frightened me. I'd mentioned adoption to David in passing. In those theoretical, someday conversations couples have. In that clinic, it was clear my someday held no weight against his immediate biological imperative. The drive home was silent until I couldn't stand it anymore. "You didn't ask me," I said, my voice trembling. "You just decided, for me, for us." He looked genuinely bewildered. "Leah, it's the solution. It's how we get a family." I was just being proactive. "It's my body." The words burst out, raw and shaky. What if I'm not ready for that? What if I don't want to put myself through it? You talked about it like it was a business transaction. What followed were the darkest 6 months of our marriage up to that point. Arguments that circled the same drain. His desire for a biological child, my fear and resentment at being steamrolled. He framed it as optimism, as fighting for our future. I felt it as an erasure of my autonomy. We were at an impasse. speaking different languages of love and sacrifice. Eventually, exhausted and heartsore, we sought a marriage counselor. It helped. It forced us to listen. In one of those painfully honest sessions, I laid out, IVF terrifies me. The hormones, the procedures, the potential for multiple births, the crushing possibility of failure. After all that, it feels like a medical marathon I never signed up for. Adoption feels like a choice, an active, loving choice to build our family. David, after a long silence, finally nodded. He took my hand. Okay, Leah, I hear you. Let's just be us for a while. We can revisit the adoption conversation later, when we're stronger. It felt like a truce, a hard-won peace. The relief was so profound it washed away any lingering doubts. I saw his compromise as an act of profound love. I thought we had survived our great storm. The air cleared, the sun came out, and for the next 3 years, we were happy. Truly, deeply happy. Or so I believed. We traveled, focused on our careers, enjoyed our friends. The topic of children was shelved. A later that felt comfortably distant. David was attentive, loving, present. There were no late nights at the office he couldn't explain, no mysterious phone calls, no scent of unfamiliar perfume. He was just my David, the perfect husband, the perfect liar. The unraveling began on an utterly ordinary day. I had taken a day off work with migraine, a blinding pain behind my eyes that left me nauseous. David texted around noon. Need to talk tonight. Something important. Please don't be upset until you hear me out. My foggy brain conjured worries about finances or a problem with his parents. Never, not in a million years, did I imagine the truth. I heard his key in the lock earlier than usual. The front door opened, and there he was, his suit jacket rumpled, his face pale and drawn. And beside him, clutching David's pant leg, was a little boy. He looked about 2, with a mop of curly brown hair and wide, uncertain eyes. My first foolish thought was that he was babysitting for a colleague in an emergency. "Hey," I said, forcing a smile through my headache. "Who's this?" David didn't smile back. He just stared at me, a desperate, haunted look in his eyes. "Leah, this is Jamie." "Hi, Jamie," I said, crouching down, my knees popping. The child hid his face against David's leg. I stood back up, my question clear in my raised eyebrows. David swallowed hard. "He's mine." I actually laughed. It was a short, sharp, disbelieving sound. "Yours? What, like for the afternoon?" "David, what's going on?" He didn't laugh. The color drained completely from his face. "No. Leah, he's my son." Time seemed to stutter. The laugh died in my throat. I looked from David's agonized expression to the little boy, really looked at him. The shape of the eyes, the curve of the brow, a cold, viscous dread began to pool in my stomach. "You're not serious," I whispered. That's when he broke. Great, heaving sobs racked his frame. He slumped against the wall, covering his face. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." Jamie, startled by the sudden emotion, began to whimper. The sound snapped me into a surreal autopilot mode. The child was scared. The man was falling apart. Someone had to function. Through a tunnel of numbness, I led Jamie to the kitchen, found some crackers and apple slices, poured him a cup of milk. My hands moved mechanically. David stayed in the hallway, his cries muffled. I got Jamie settled in the living room with a cartoon on the TV, his small body curled on the sofa. Only then did I turn to my husband. "Explain. Now." The story he told, punctuated by hiccuping sobs, was a cliché from a bad daytime drama. Yet was my life. During our rough patch, the months surrounding the IVF fights and beginning of counseling, he had felt isolated and like a failure. He'd met a woman named Carla at an industry conference. It was a moment of weakness, a meaningless fling that lasted only a few weeks. They used protection, but it failed. She told him she was pregnant. He panicked, begged her to terminate, but she refused. By then, our marriage was on the mend thanks to counseling. He couldn't bear to lose me, so he made a decision of staggering cowardice and calculation. He would support Carla financially, on the condition she keep the pregnancy and his paternity a secret from me. His long-term plan? To wait, to let our marriage stabilize, then gently guide me toward the idea of adoption. When the time was right, he would facilitate us adopting his own biological child. He painted it as a twisted, tragic solution that would give us a family and keep him in his child's life. Carla, he said, was struggling, had little family support, and agreed to the arrangement for financial security. Where is she now? I asked, my voice eerily calm. There was a car accident, Leah, 3 weeks ago. She didn't make it. There was no one else. Her parents are elderly and in a home. Her sister wants nothing to do with Jamie. He's mine. He's all mine now. Ours. Please. The room swayed. The betrayal was a multi-layered poison. The affair, the child, the years of deception, the monstrous plan to manipulate me into raising his secret son, the sheer, breathtaking audacity of it. Get out, I said, the words scraping my throat raw. Leah, please, just listen. Get out. I screamed, the sound tearing from a place I didn't know existed. He flinched but didn't move. Jamie started crying again from the living room. The sound was a dagger. I couldn't be here. I couldn't look at either of them. I grabbed my purse and car keys, shoved past David, and ran. I drove for hours, my vision blurred, until I found a generic hotel on the highway. I texted David one sentence: "Do not contact me." Then I turned off my phone and spent the next 48 hours in a state of catatonic shock, staring at the texture hotel ceiling, playing every memory, every smile, every tender moment back in my head, and wondering which ones were real. On the third day, my phone reluctantly turned back on, buzzed with a call from Diane, my mother-in-law. Her voice was syrup-soaked concern. "Leah, darling, David told us everything. We're in town. Please, come to the house. Let's talk this through as a family. We want to help you." I was weak. I was shattered. The idea of a maternal figure, any lifeline, was too tempting. I was a fool. I went. The scene at my own home was staged like an intervention. Jamie was thankfully not there. David sat slumped in an armchair. Robert stood by the fireplace, stern. Diane swept forward, enveloping me in a hug that felt like a trap. "Oh, my dear girl," she crooned, leading me to the sofa. "This is such a shock. For everyone." As soon as I sat, the atmosphere shifted. David cleared his throat. "Leah, if you had just been able to give us a child, none of this would have happened." The words were so vile, so blatantly cruel, that for a second I was speechless. Then fury, white-hot and righteous, ignited in my chest. None of this would have happened if you had kept your pants on and been honest, you pathetic coward. "Leah, let him speak," Robert intoned, his voice the sound of gavels striking wood. David continued, emboldened by his parents' presence. "What's done is done. Jamie is here. He's a blessing, a gift, and you're being selfish and cruel to reject him. He needs a mother." Diane patted my hand. "Think of it, sweetheart. This is God's way of solving your little problem. This child needs a home, and you have a home to give. It's a second chance for everyone. The condescension, the religious manipulation, the sheer insanity of it broke something loose in me. I yanked my hand back. My little problem? Are you hearing yourselves? This isn't a stray puppy. This is a living, breathing consequence of your son's infidelity. I will not be gaslit into thanking God for my husband's bastard child. The conversation, if it could be called that, devolved into a shouting match. They circled me, a united front of toxic positivity and blame shifting. I was the infertile one, the unreasonable one, the heartless woman denying an orphan child a loving home. Diane's mask finally slipped completely. "You should be on your knees thanking David for staying with you," she snarled. "A real man would have left a barren wife years ago. He had a fling, so what? He brought you a child. You're useless, and you should be grateful." That was it. The final thread snapped. I stood up, my entire body trembling with rage. "Get out of my house," I said, my voice low and deadly calm. Robert puffed out his chest. "This is David's house." "Then I'm leaving him," I said, looking directly at my husband, who wouldn't meet my eyes. "And I'm taking half of it. Enjoy your gift." I walked out, got in my car, and called the one person I knew with both the legal expertise and the ferocious loyalty to help. My brother, Ethan. He was a corporate lawyer based in London, but his network was global. Within an hour, he had me on the phone with a brilliant pit bull of a divorce attorney named Anya in my city, and had booked the first flight home. "Stay at my apartment," he said, his voice tight with anger. "The key is under the blue pot by the door. I'll be there in 18 hours. Do not speak to any of them without Anya present." The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings, paperwork, and profound grief. I moved into Ethan's sleek, modern apartment, a stark contrast to the cozy home I'd lost. David tried to contact me, his messages oscillating between pleading, angry, and self-pitying. Anya advised me not to block him, as his communications could be useful, but to never respond. It was agony watching the torrent of his justifications and accusations flow in. Ethan, once he arrived, was my rock. He listened. He raged on my behalf. He made terrible cups of tea, and he offered a wild, cathartic idea one night over takeout. "You know what you should do?" he said, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Agree to meet him. Tell him you'll consider reconciliation and raising the kid on one condition. You get to have an open marriage for a year. Just you, a boyfriend, or a few. Let him see how that medicine tastes." I almost choked on my noodles. "Ethan, Anya would murder me. It would torpedo the divorce settlement." He grinned. "Yeah, probably. But imagine his face. Imagine his parents' faces." It's a beautiful, terrible thought. For a fleeting moment, I did imagine it. The power of it, the poetic justice. But I shook my head. I don't want to sink to his level. I just want out. The official meeting, orchestrated by Anya, took place at her office. David looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. The cocky defiance he'd shown with his parents was gone, replaced by a harried, desperate exhaustion. The facade of the perfect man had crumbled completely, revealing the weak, overwhelmed stranger beneath. "Leah, you have to understand the pressure I'm under," he began, launching into a monologue about the cost of childcare, his dwindling savings, the impossibility of being a single father while working full-time. His parents, he admitted, had returned home after a week, claiming the stress was too much for their blood pressure. The village he'd counted on to raise his child had disbanded. "It's not my problem, David," I said, the words feeling true and solid. "You made a choice. Several choices. This is the consequence." "You condemn an innocent child to foster care?" he shot back, his eyes blazing with a last-ditch attempt at guilt. "His mother's family wants nothing to do with him. It's me or the system. Are you really that cold? You condemned him the moment you decided to hide him and use me as your backup plan." I replied, my voice steady. "Your failure to plan for his actual care is not my moral failing. It's yours." He called me names then, ugly, Hateful words that echoed in the sterile conference room. Anya calmly ended the meeting. As he was ushered out, he turned at the door, his shoulders slumped. I never thought you could be so cruel. You never knew me at all, I said softly, and I clearly never knew you. The divorce proceedings were brutal, but Anya was a warrior. David fought the settlement, but his financial situation, now burdened with full-time childcare costs, was precarious. The evidence of his deception, his own admissions in text and email, painted a clear picture. The house was sold, the proceeds split. I took my share of my freedom and a deep, lasting scar on my soul. The final decree arrived on a sunny Thursday morning. I held the paper, expecting a flood of emotion, relief, sorrow, vindication. I felt only a quiet, hollow stillness. It was over. The legal tie was severed. The emotional one would take longer, maybe forever. I moved out of Ethan's apartment and into a small, bright studio with a view of the city skyline. It was mine, alone, untainted by any memory of David or the life we'd built on lies. He tried to contact me a few more times, a text on what would have been our anniversary, an email pleading for closure. I never responded. I had all the closure I needed in the signed document from the court. My life now is quieter. I see a therapist to untangle the knots of betrayal and rebuild my sense of trust. I've reconnected with old friends. I've taken up painting again, something I let fall by the wayside. The colors are messy and bold, a stark contrast to the muted, perfect palette of my old life. There is no fairy tale ending. The pain is a ghost that sometimes visits in the quiet hours. I don't know if I will ever love or trust a man again, but I know I am free. I walk through my little apartment, brew coffee just for myself, and look out at the city lights winking on as dusk falls. The future is uncertain, and that is terrifying. But it is also, for the first time in a long time, authentically, unequivocally mine. I am no longer a character in someone else's carefully constructed drama. The limited series of my horror story marriage has been canceled. My own story, whatever it may be, is just beginning.